In today's video, we are going to look at radicals. We want to look at two things when we are adding and subtracting radicals. We need to go back to the basics in algebra when we have, let's say, 2x plus 3x. When we add two like terms, here what we can do, we just take the 2 and the 3, the coefficients of the variables, we add those ones, and then we get 5x. So we are going to use the same approach. There should be something that we need to have in common. Now here what's in common is x. Because we have x and we have x there, then we can now add the two because they are like terms. But if we could have x plus y, that will be equal to x plus y, because these two are not like terms, therefore we cannot add them. It's also true, if we can have minus here, we cannot subtract those two. We are still going to have x minus y because they are not like terms. So it is the same with radicals. Let's say we have square root of 2 plus square root of 3. Keep in mind that when we are working with radicals, we do not want to write the decimals, what these square roots are equal to. No, we just want to add the radicals, and then the final answer should have a radical. Sometimes we may be able to simplify it if it's a whole number, not decimal numbers. Now in this case we cannot add these two radicals. The reason for that is because here we have, under the square root we have 2, while here we have 3, so we cannot add these two. Now the only radicals that we can add, if we have, let's say, square root of 2 plus 2 and then square root of 2. Now what you can see here I said we should have something in common. Here we had x and x, therefore we add the coefficients and then the x remains the same. Now here, what is under the square root is 2. What is under the square root here is 2. So what we need to do, we just have to add the coefficients of the radicals. Here we know it's 1. So 1 plus 2, we get 3. And then we write the square root of 2. That is how we add radicals. Let this one be example number 1. Example number 2. Let's say we have 3 and then square root of 7 plus 2 square root of 7. What we look at, we go to the square root. Here we have 7 under the square root, we have 7 under the square root. Therefore, we can add the two radicals. So we just add the coefficients of those radicals. We have 3 plus 2, we get 5. And then we write square root of 7. Remember that we are not looking for what is equal to square root of 7. We don't want to write the decimal numbers. The idea is just to add and subtract the radicals. This is what we are calling a radical, although we call it a square root, but we are working with numbers without expressing them in their decimal form. Now here we are working with the square root. Sometimes we can also work with the cube root. If we have, let's say, cube root of 3 plus cube root of 3 here. Again, we have cube root there. In front here we have 1, in front here we have 2. So we just add 1 plus 2 to get 3, and then the cube root remains the same, which is cube root of 3. Even if we have fourth root or fifth root, the idea remains the same. That is when we are dealing with adding. When it comes to subtracting, it's exactly the same way. It's exactly the same way. Let me write here subtracting. Subtracting radicals. Let's write we have 4 square root of 7 minus 2 and then square root of 7. So the idea here is we have to make sure that what is under the square root should be equal. We have 7 here, we have 7 there. Therefore, we can now subtract the two radicals. We say 4 minus 2, we get 2, and then square root of 7. Here, I'll only give one example when it comes to subtracting, because the idea is just the same as when we are adding. Now, sometimes you can be given a tricky question that you need to either add or subtract, but keep in mind the idea is just to have the same radical, just like when we are dealing with like terms in algebra. So you want to have like terms so that you can collect those like terms, and then depending on the sign between them, you either add them or you subtract them. Now let's say we have, I give another example here. Okay, this one is not really adding, not really subtracting, but this one is adding. Let's say we have square root of 50 plus square root of 18. What do we do with these radicals? Do we add them? Now here what we need to do, you have to bring in the concept of prime factors. We cannot add them the way they are. So what we can try to do here, we have to get this side, we should get a radical that should be equal, okay, a square root that should have a number inside the square root, which we should have the same this side, so that those two we can add them depending now on the side, the coefficients in front of them. Then we can either not really subtract, but add them. Now we know that 50, we can write 50 as 25 times 2. While 18 we can write as 9 times 2. 25 times 2 you get 50. 9 times 2 you get 18. Now what we can see here is that this is the same as writing square root of 25 times square root of 2 plus square root of 9 times square root of 2. Now what you can see here is that we have square root of 2 here, we have square root of 2 here, we also have square root of 2. That is what we're looking for. Now what we can quickly do here, square root of 25 we know it is 5. And then we bring the square root of 2 plus square root of 9 is 3, and then we bring the square root of 2. Since we know that the square root of 2, we know it's if you write it as a decimal, it's 1.4 something, but we are not working with decimals. We just want to work with the square root, which are radicals. Now that we have square root of 2 here, we have square root of 2 there, we can now add them. So we now take 5 plus 3 to get 8, and then we write square root of 2, and then we are done. In the next video, I'll show how to divide and multiply radicals. How to divide and multiply radicals. Actually, when you're working with radicals, it's very easy. You just need to get the concept, and then from there you can now do whatever the question is asking. If you did not subscribe to this channel yet, please do so that you can get a lot of videos that I keep uploading every week.